How wonderful to be together today across this evolving world. We are one mountain, many paths, where our mission is what Barbara Marx Hubbard and Dr. Marc Gafni call the planetary awakening in love through unique self-symphony. We are activating a new humanity and awakening as a new species, Homo Amor, the fulfillment of Homo sapien. We are a church, a synagogue, a mosque, a temple, a zendo. No one is excluded, everyone is included, and we come together to attune to the evolutionary impulse awakening within us. Welcome home, everyone. I am Kristina Tahel, the co-executive producer, along with Krista Josepha, Jacqueline Clark, and Jamie Long, and we are delighted to be gathered together here for week 259 of our live broadcast. What a privilege it is to be part of this global community that contributes to humanity's flourishing. Study Becoming a Future Human and the 11th Hour course next Saturday, October 4th, where we will dive ever deeper into the new universe story. What is unique about this moment in time and what is needed to become future humans moving forward. To learn more, reach out to Jamie Long, whose email is in the chat box now. These courses are on our website, onemountainmanypaths.org, along with many excellent books like Your Unique Self, The Radical Path to Personal Enlightenment by Dr. Marc Gafni. As Andrew Harvey wrote, Your Unique Self is one of the most brilliant, provocative, and original books of the century, in which Dr. Gafni fuses together the deepest insights of the Eastern and Western mystery traditions to provide an evolutionary map for the great birth that is arising in and through our contemporary world crises. We are looking for transcribers, editors, and translators. Reach out to Krista Josepha for the many opportunities. Step into these opportunities to receive back 1,000 gifts every day. Use the Zoom or Facebook chat function to say hi, to let us know where you're from, and to resonate the Dharma. On Zoom, check that your chat settings say all panelists and attendees and not just all panelists so that we can hear from you. Sign up for and read our weekly emails. There you find our replays, community activities, feature videos, volunteer opportunities, celebrations, and surprise and inspiration. Now, for what to expect today. We begin with a recap from myself from last week's One Mountain, Many Paths. Then Dr. Marc Gafni sets our intention. Then David resonates our evolutionary love code. Then we move into our evolutionary sermon with Dr. Marc and sometimes from Barbara Marx Hubbard. And to close, Krista invites us to commit our outrageous acts of love and to contribute our gifts to this revolution. At the end, we bring everyone on for our goodbyes. Marc writes Evolutionary Love Codes. Marc and Barbara studied codes together, comparing them with Barbara's own 52 codes for conscious self-evolution. These codes grow out of radical commitment, crystallizing the new story of humanity, quote, evolving the course of consciousness and culture, which is the source code of love, unquote. I want to especially welcome anyone who is new with us here today. Know that each of our communions are a standalone, and every week's communion does build on the week before. One Mountain, Many Paths is radically committed to telling the new universe story. Here goes my recap from last week. Healing the global intimacy disorder. We are facing catastrophic and existential risk. It's very easy to look away. There's a cancer metastasizing exponential cells in the body politic and in the heart of the cosmos. We must recognize our crises are real and they are at hand. All of the great and unfinished works of history, the unfinished works of love and of evolution itself are stalling. We're at a moment in which all of the past, all of its toiling, all of its striving, and all of its yearning has passed the baton to us. We face the sixth mass extinction, and we face the death of our humanity. Without us, there is no future. But crisis is an evolutionary driver, and crisis has to evolve the source code, a new story of value rooted in first principles and first values of cosmos, a new vision so powerful it addresses the root causes. Story is part of the actual source code structures of the cosmos itself. We can't just make it up. The story's got to be an outrageous love story, not just a meta-theoretical political story. It's got to be a love story. There's a global intimacy disorder. Every challenge global, every challenge requiring coherence and coordination, intimacy, shared identity, a sense of the whole. We see each other, feel each other, share a field of value and purpose. The global intimacy disorder expresses itself in pseudo-eros. Pseudo-eros is the failed story of win-lose metrics and complicated system in which there's no intimacy between all the parts. When we don't have eros, we have an empty field. It's all encompassing. It can't be a civilization that will fail, and then all sorts of other civilizations will go on. It's a global civilization, which is suffused with a global intimacy disorder, and we know how to heal it. Are you willing to play a leading role in the most unimaginably beautiful, heart-opening, heart-rending, ecstatic love story that you can imagine, witnessed by all of reality, in which you are your most wondrous and amazing self, shining brighter than you ever imagined possible? Our mission in this time between stories and in this time between worlds is to step into the space in between, to step into the confusion, to step into the broken information ecology, to step into the failure of frameworks and to articulate where we are with a radical sense of positivity, hope, and clarity. We've diagnosed it. We're willing to face into the void. We move to the next stage of evolution. Sometimes we come closer, sometimes we step a little farther away, but we never look away. We need to evolve a new structure of intimacy that reality has never before known. All of the future looks to us. With that, I invite us to more deeply enter into the holy and sacred space of One Mountain, Many Paths, and I turn my word to you, beloved Dr. Marc Gafni.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kristina Tahel Amelon. And what a stunning Dharma recap, right? And Kristina to hell evoked the fragrance of everything we did in, last weekend, wove particular pieces into this stunning tapestry, each one a direct quote, but each one woven together. And, one of the ways I mark my week is I wait for, after doing a one mountain the week before, I wait to hear it resonated, right? To hear it refracted through Kristina Tehell's Dharma recap. And it's one of the things that sets my week. So just feel that and feel the full passion and poignancy and potency of Kristina Tehell in it, because that's what it means to be a unique self. So welcome everyone. And thank you, Kristina Tehell. And let's go to the chat box and just give her a big thank you, everyone, okay? Can everyone do that? Let's just find each other in the chat box and give Kristina Tehell just a big, huge thank you, everyone. Right? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, oh my God, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, wow. And I want to set our intention now. And I'm so happy we did last week the way we did it. And I know, friends, that last week was a lot. We stepped into this big, huge tapestry. And what we're going to be doing every week is to unpack part of that tapestry. What's our intention? What is One Mountain, Many Paths? So One Mountain, Many Paths is not merely a church or a synagogue or a mosque or a secular humanist center. One Mountain, Many Paths is a revolution. And it's a revolution in meaning, which comes from the understanding that we are in this moment at a time between worlds. We are in this very moment, friends, brothers, sisters, right? We're at a time between stories. And we literally experience ourselves accurately, like Leonardo da Vinci did with Marcello Ficinio, the Medicis, right in the background, in Florence, the Black Death, the pandemic has ravaged Europe, killed almost half of Europe, huge swaths of Asia. The systems of meaning that defined the traditional period are breaking down under the new discoveries of the God voice incarnate in the scientific method, right? And the new intimacies that the scientific method gives with reality. The overreaches of pre-modernity, its cruelties, as Voltaire said, ushering in modernity, remember the cruelties. Crack the world open. And there's this void, there's this emptiness. Modernity's not yet there. And in this space in between, the Renaissance emerges. And Da Vinci understands that the only way to heal the fracture, the only way to heal the pain, the only way to address the suffering, you can't make it tragically into every village in Europe. So what can you do when you actually can feel all of it? You have to actually participate in evolving the source code. This is a moment in which we have to evolve the source code of consciousness and culture itself, right? This is a moment in which we have to literally evolve the source code of consciousness and culture itself. So our goal is not to be, although those are very beautiful things, it's not to be a local synagogue, church, mosque, or secular humanist center, although all those are important and beautiful and wondrous. Right? But our intention is to actually step in as revolutionaries into the source code itself, to understand as deeply as we can every field of human knowing and the best leading and validated insights in every field in human knowing, in the traditional pre-modern period, in the modern period, and in the postmodern period, and then to weave them together at this time between stories, at this time between worlds, because we know that in this space in between, we are quite literally poised between utopia and dystopia. The dystopian possibility is real. And it's very easy to look away. And as Robert J. Lifton wrote in his book several decades ago, which was prescient, right? We turn away from apocalypse because we don't know what to do with it. And the notion that it could all fail, we all thought it was too big to fail. And we've been saying for 10 years, Barbara and I together, it's not too big to fail. Friends, we have to address this. We have to step into the space. And now we all know in the midst of the COVID pandemic that it's not too big to fail. And we understand that dystopia yawns before us. But just as dystopia yawns before us, so does utopia. So does unbearable beauty, unbearably gorgeous new truth, unbearably wondrous, unimaginable new goodness, new structures of intimacy, new structures of love, new structures of what it means to be a human being, the new human and the new humanity. Homo sapien is yearning, trembling to birth the new human and the new humanity, Homo amor. And to do that, we have to address and identify the core root cause underneath all the generator functions, which we talked about in many other broadcasts together. But at the root, underneath all the generator functions for existential and catastrophic risk, at the root is a global intimacy disorder. And we heal the global intimacy disorder by generating a new intimacy. And we generate a new intimacy by telling a new story. Just like in a couple, if the intimacy begins to break down, they've got to retell their story. They've got to re-narrate their story. They've got to remember the pieces that they've forgotten of their story. I want to share something with you beautiful in this intention. In the world of Greece, evil is the loss of knowledge. As Thomas Carlyle and Matthew Arnold, right? Hebraism and Hellenism, Hebraism and Hellenism, culture and anarchy remind us, right? For the Greek, wow, Plato's Theaetetus, the loss of knowledge is the source of evil. But for the really realized awakened one who understands that we're not just, as the Greek said, spectators to time and existence, but we're actually players. We're actually on the court. The becoming of reality actually moves through us. We understand that the source of evil is not the loss of knowledge. The source of evil is the loss of memory. When we forget what we've been to each other, right, in our love. We forget the passion that brought us together. We forget the goodness. We forget the 1,000 moments, right? There's some things we need to forget, right? The great mystics say there's the art of remembering and forgetting. Let's let go of the pains, the small ones, the big ones. We can forget those, but let's remember who we really are. Let's remember the story. Let's evolve the story. To remember the story and to tell a new story is how we create new intimacy. So this is the moment, my friends, where we come together to tell the new story. That's our intention. It's an unimaginable intention. And it's not a declared story. It's not a dogmatic story. But it's not just a mythical story either, right? It's myth in the sense of that which is larger than what small categories can hold. So we understand that life is a mythic life, meaning it's bigger than, right? It's not less than. So we're here to tell the new story together, to create new sacred text. And tell a story that can bring everyone on board, a story that makes room for everyone. Can you feel that? A story that makes room for everyone, a story that makes room for everything, to create a world that makes room for everyone, to create a world that makes room for everything. All our truths are true but partial. All our values are part of a larger field of value. We need to begin to inhabit each other's values, to transcend the polarization. And this new story, right? This is the moral imperative of this moment in time. The way to heal suffering, the way to stand against existential risk, which says there will be no future, that trillions of lives will be unborn. So the way to be loyal to the memory of the future, And the way to be in integrity and madly aflame and in love, not just with the memory of the future, but with the memory of the past, because all of the past great endeavors are undone. There's all the unfinished business, which is ours to complete. It's ours to pick up the baton. It's ours to tell this new story, right? What a moment. What a privilege, right? Trembling before she, right? We're filled with outrageous joy. We're filled with outrageous love, and we're filled with outrageous pain. Right? We live in a world of outrageous pain. The only response is outrageous love. We live in a world of outrageous beauty. The only response is outrageous love. And every week we resonate a new code. So, oh my God, it is a mad privilege to be here with you together. And I said, evil or the breakdown is a loss of memory, right? I never forget. I had our beloved partner, Barbara Marx Hubbard, and my evolutionary homemate in this great endeavor, who I miss every day, and who's with us and we'll be hearing from this year, right? Quite often. And Barbara and I talk often about the continuity of consciousness. And she promised me, and Barbara, I'm holding you to your promise, I'll be with you in one mountain, even after I pass. And I'll be with you holding this, with you and with all of you. And so Barbara's with us, right, in the deepest way. So David, take us inside. Let's resonate the code. What a wild joy to be with you. Oh my God, David.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mark. Our love stories, our personal stories are part of something much larger. So as I resonate the code, feel into that with me. Reality is not merely a fact. Reality is a story. Reality is not an ordinary story. Reality is a love story. Reality is not an ordinary love story. Reality is an evolutionary love story, an outrageous love story. And your story, your outrageous love story, is chapter and verse in the universe, a love story. Reality is not just an outrageous love story. Reality is an outrageous love story, which is a story of value rooted in first principles and first values. Existential and catastrophic risk generated by complicated, not complex systems and exponential technology cannot be addressed by a new story alone and cannot be addressed only by first values and first principles. Existential risk can only be addressed and transformed by first principles and first values embedded in a story of value. Or said differently, a story of value rooted in first principles and first values. And finally, your story of value rooted in first principles and first values is chapter and verse in the universe, a love story. And with that, I turn my word back to you, beloved Dr. Mark.
David, thank you. And David's right resonance of the code and Kristina Tahel's Dharma recap, right? And so what's the word for today? We can come closer, we can step back, but we never look away. Okay, so here we go, friends. Okay, here we go, all the way. All the way, let's take this all the way now. We're about to go into prayer. And if you notice from last week, those of you who were here last week, we're right, and welcome to all the new people. And I want to make sure every week we just welcome anyone who's new, like mad, welcome, welcome, welcome. And every week, as Kristina said, stands alone and is part of the larger story. So at this point, we move into prayer. And prayer is not about the cosmic vending machine, God, that you put in a quarter and is owned by your religious system and you get out a particular result. And if you don't get the result, then, oh my God, what happened? Prayer is so much more subtle and profound. Prayer is the realization, not just stay with me, okay? Prayer is the realization that it's all personal. When someone says to me, don't take it personally. What do you mean don't take it personally? It's personal. The whole thing's personal. That's a deep realization. It's not personality, right? It's not my victim story, but it's personal. It's infinitely and intimately personal, right? Reality is, as the code said, reality is not merely a fact. Reality is a story. And we're going to talk about it today. But this personhood is not a value. Now go stay close. How many of you remember that we talked about last year first principles and first values extensively? We did even 4 or 5 sessions, right? Extended sessions when we finished One Mountain, like talking about first principles and first values. So story is a first principle and first value of cosmos, and personhood is a first principle and first value of cosmos. You're not a gadget. Cyber totalism or dataism, which has come to define much of the techplex, which is producing what I'm calling with my friend Zachary Stein, techno-feudalism, is based on the failure to understand, is based on the failure to understand the first principle and first value of personhood. So personhood doesn't just live between me and Tom, or between Tom and Juby, or between Ken and Karen, right? Personhood lives as a quality of cosmos. There's the personhood of cosmos. Personhood is a structure of reality all the way up and all the way down the evolutionary chain, and we'll talk more about that. But not now. For now, let's just understand that any intimacy that I participate in is part of the larger field of intimacy, right? We live in an intimate universe. And if we would have to try and speak of God in a sentence, which we can't do because God is neti, right? Nothing can be said which in any sense touches. God is non-conceptual, includes all concepts and beyond all concepts, right? The infinity of infinities, right? God is the possibility of possibilities. But if I would try and allude to the fragrance of divinity, I would talk about God not only as the infinity of power, but we would talk about God as the infinity of intimacy. And when you're intimate, you say, I love you again and again, right? So there's always a couple of voices who say, right, I got that. I've heard Mark say before, God's not the infinity of power, it's the infinity of intimacy. Got this. Next means you're not even here. Good morning, wake up. No, why do I say I love you again and again? I said to Kristina Kincaid, right, 5 times this morning, I love you. Or why did I say that? Well, she knows it, but because it's not information, right? It's new again. So let's make it new again in a way that it's never been. God's not only the infinity of power, God's the infinity of intimacy. Wow. And each of us as a unique self are God's unique intimacy, right? And when we come together, the space between us creates an intimacy that never was. So when I come together and I have a new relationship with Ken, who I met a few years ago, wow, so in that space between us, a new God is born. And when you create a relationship, and the deeper the relationship, like the deeper the quality of godness that's born in that space in between, so you're responsible in the relationship, not just to your small self, you're responsible to the new God that you birthed. Wow. So when we pray, we turn to God and we say, all of the third person is really second person. And Krista, Joseph, if you can, maybe put that chant in the chat box, would be fantastic. Okay. So we did a chant last week and we're going to look at it again this week. Then we're going to go into prayer and then we're going to go into story. So the chant is, if you can see it in the chat box, it's Ki Atahu. And it's gorgeous. So Ki Atahu means this is why. This is the reason for it all. Right? Ki. It's a 3-word koan. Ki Atahu. It's a 3-word koan. Ki means this is the reason for it all in the original Hebrew. Ata means you, right? The great master who was going to say a blessing. And the blessings always start, blessed are you, God, King of the world, man, and long blessings. And this master, Zushi of Anipol was his name, one of the favorites of Martin Buber. He could never get through a blessing because he would say, blessed are you, it's you, ah! Right? And everything would get knocked down and he would faint in ecstasy. Right? That's you. That's the infinity of intimacy, right? So ki means the reason for everything is ata, because of you. Ki ata hu. Hu means third person. Him, her, who. So what we're saying is it's a 3-word koan, ki ata hu, right? The real cause of everything is ata, is you, and ki ata hu. The you is really what is behind the who, him, third person. Really, all of third person is really second person. Did you get that? All of third person is really second person. It's all personal. There's nothing that's not personal. The whole thing, right? To actually be alive is to know that reality is falling madly in love with me, literally in every second. That's not a dogma. That's not a conjecture. It's the actual experience of being alive in reality. Kristina and I were looking a few days ago at these incredible micro targeted pictures, which amplify little ordinary moments, physical moments in cosmos. When you then amplify them through microphotography, you realize there's this dazzling intensity and beauty beyond imagination. Right? If we could actually feel, and let's feel it right now, just the mirror neurons passing between us, right? Just the several million cells created in you literally in every second, right? The 100 trillion atoms in every cell of 35 trillion in your body that are all communicating and talking to each other literally in the second and every second. And I could go on, and some other week we will. But it's all a love story. And you're irreducibly unique in the story, so reality's personally addressing you. But that's ata, reality saying you. So there's this infinity of intimacy, right? That lives at the very heart of cosmos. It's the personhood of the whole thing, right? It's the personal that's not just beyond the process. It's the personal that adheres at the very center of the process. I was very privileged a bunch of years ago to write a book called Self, which was a fierce critique of my colleague, Andrew Cohen. And as you know, we're doing dialogues together now, which is wonderful. And it's a fierce critique of Andrew's notion that he held back then of the impersonal, right? This notion that the impersonal is beyond the personal. And Andrew's, shifted and we've come together on this notion, right? And it's a book called Self. It's a wonderful book. We basically say in that book that there's personality. You got to get beyond your separate self-contraction personality and realize there's a cosmic process, but it looks like it's impersonal. But actually at the very core of that impersonal, it's personal. And it's all personal. There's the personal that's within the impersonal and it's beyond the impersonal. It's all intimacy. Okay, ki atahu. Right, ki atahu. Right, you get that? Ki atahu. Right, the you, right, the second person is third person. So let's take a look. Can you take a look? Let's take a look at it for a second, okay? And it goes like this. And it's a chant. Yawatahu Bala Yeshuot Bala Yeshuot Uval Anechamot Ki Yawatahu, right? Ki, the reason for everything, ata, the you, who is in all the third person. Ki Yawatahu Bal HaYeshuot Bal HaYeshuot Uval HaNechamot Ki Yawatahu Bal HaYeshuot Bal HaYeshuot Uval HaNechamot. For you are the master of liberation. You are the master of consolation. Oh, you are the master of liberation. And you are the master of consolation. Hey, na, hey, na, ni, na, ni, na, na, hey. Nani 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 hey ho ho nani 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 hey nani 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 Oh, you are the master of liberation. You are the master of consolation. Hey, na, hey, together around the world. Na, dee, na, dee, na, na, hey. Na, dee, na, dee, na, 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 dee, na, dee, na, dee, na, na. Hey, 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 ho. Hey, dee, na, dee, na, dee, na, hey, hey, hey. Hey, dee, na, dee, na, dee, na, hey, hey, hey. Hey, dee, na, dee, na, dee, na, hey, 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 ho, ho. That's prayer. So let's stay really close, friends. Let's stay really, really close. Stay really close, closer than ever, closer than we ever have been before. Okay, we in all the way. So the master of liberation, the master of consolation, the personhood of cosmos is in your story, part of your story. Leonard Cohen, we're going to turn this into prayer. Take us inside Leonard Cohen. That's what he's singing about. That's what the holy and broken hallelujah is about. It's what hallelujah is about. It's why it has more covers than any other story. It's about this. It's all personal. The holy and the broken hallelujah. Take us inside. Oh my God.
Now I've heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do ya? It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor, major, the baffled king composing hallelujah.
We find each other in the chat box. right? And if you're new, right, just find your chat box and we pray. Hallelujah, right? Oh my God, right? Oh my God. And we ask for everything. In prayer, we ask for our personal needs because prayer affirms the dignity of personal need, right? Okay, we ask for our personal needs and then we ask for everything for everyone. So let's find the prayer. Let's meet in the chat box and we'll read the prayers, right? I pray that I remember over and over, right? Over and over again. I just keep remembering, Shadi, I pray that my eye operation, oh my God, right? Shati, that my eye operation goes well tomorrow, right? Oh my God. Shanti, I pray for universal democracy rooted in first values and first principles, ever telling our new outrageous love story. Hallelujah. Taylor, I pray for my son, Eli, right, whose birthday is today, right? Wow. And happy birthday to Eli and happy birthday to Simona, right? Simona, happy birthday, right? And your birthday is the day that you realize if you're awake, it's the day that God has said she couldn't do it without you, right? Lady J, Jamie, I pray to open my heart to outrageous love. Jacqueline, I pray for Leanne and her family as her dad transitions, right? Rob, I pray that we make heaven on earth together by remembering our essence in every moment, right? Arye, Lion, I pray for your need. Your need is my allurement. I love you. Ada, Sorensen, I pray, right? I pray that TOL, right? I pray that I can love outrageously deeper, wider, ever deeply. Raquel, I pray for lovers Anna and Helena for healing and grace. Joseph, I pray for strength to continue to take excellent care of my body so I can show up more and more powerfully for love. Rachel Resnick, I pray to keep learning about intimacy with myself, right? With the reader, right? With friends, family, strangers, right? What does that mean, right? Wow. I pray for myself, right? And we remember every moment, Rachel, right? We remember sitting at a restaurant. We remember every phone call, right? We remember all the beauty and all the places. I pray, Zohar says, for myself and all of us to open our hearts and minds and bodies more deeply than ever. Veronica Anderson, right? Hallelujah. I pray to become the beloved and for the family, right? For love. Inaka, Lynn Schwartz, right? Veva, I pray for the health of everyone, right? Inaka, David Aitan, Veronica, Krista Josefa, G Mag, Dawn, right? Renee, right? Simona, right? And we take these prayers and we weave them together, right? And we literally lift them, right? Like a prayer to the sky. Right? Oh my God. So friends, right? And as we're here together in the infinity of intimacy, and we're here to kind of take this the next step. And we did a big week last week, right, on story. And we're gonna be kind of weaving this notion of story in a way it's never been woven in human history before. We're gonna be weaving together the sciences, the interior sciences, the exterior sciences, right? And merging together streams of wisdom and creating something new, right? Creating a new story, right? And creating a new story about story, right? And last week, we laid out a lot of pieces. We gathered a lot of pieces that we've talked about over the years. And so now we're kind of slow down, you move too fast, right? Right, that dates us from God. I remember that song came out, right, when I was like 4, right? Or maybe 10. Right. Well, let's go slow now. Okay, let's take the longer way, which is the shorter way. So let's understand. So let's go a few steps together. And we'll look at our code, at our evolutionary love code. We're going to unpack this step by step. And I'm just wildly excited to be at this moment to do this with you. Okay, so are we ready? Are we ready to play a larger game? Are we ready to play a larger game like we've never played before? Are we ready? Who's ready? Who's ready? Are you ready? Are you ready to play a larger game? Right? Are we ready to participate, right, in the evolution of love? So let's put that code right all the way down in the chat box, ready with fairy tale, and let's step inside. Okay, so step one is we're gonna do this in 7 or 8 parts. So we're just gonna start today. So let's look at the evolutionary love code together, right? Reality is not merely a fact. Reality is a story. Reality is not an ordinary story. Reality is a love story. Reality is not an ordinary love story. Reality is an evolutionary love story, an outrageous love story. And your story, your outrageous love story, is chapter and verse in the universal love story. Right? Wow. Reality is not just an outrageous love story, right? Reality is an outrageous love story, which is a story of value, of inherent value, a story of value rooted in first principles and first values. Wow. Now, the second part of the code I'm not going to talk about this week. We're writing on that extensively. We've talked about it extensively, but we've talked about how existential and catastrophic risk, right, generated by complicated and not complex systems and exponential technologies, right, can't be addressed just by a new story and can't be addressed only by first principles and first values. Existential risk can only be addressed and transformed by first principles and first values embedded in a story of value, or said differently, a story of value rooted in first principles and first values. Now let's take this slow. So let's start in the middle. Let's just start with maybe the first minute or two. Let's just start with a word. So in the original Hebrew, there's a word which Leonard Cohen loves, which is about the book of life. And in the book of life is Sefer, right? The book HaChaim, right? The book of life, right? Sefer, right? And someone maybe play with me in the chat box, S-E-F-E-R, Sefer. You can feel the word, S-E-F-E-R. Anyone got that for me? Right in the chat box, fantastic. S-E-F-E-R, okay? So Sefer, right, is a book. But that same word Sefer is also story. Right? So the book of life, my book of life is my story. So the central image in the interior sciences that we're placing at the center of what we're calling the new story is the understanding that my life is a text. There's the sacred text of the canonical great traditions, and there's the sacred text of what I called many years back in a book called Soul Prince. There's the sacred text of my sacred autobiography, right? So, wow. So Sefer, my book of life, is my sipur, same word, is my story. Now, the third meaning of that three-letter root, Sefer, right in the original Hebrew, is sapar. You can feel it's the same word. And sapar means boundary. Right, so one of the things we need to know is what's the boundary of my story? And we're not going to talk about that this week so much. It's going to be the focus of next week. What's the boundary of my story? Who are the characters in my story, right? Are the characters in my story the people I think, my biological father, mother, uncle, right? Are those the characters? How do I widen the storyline? How do I include more people in my story? How do I include more people in my outrageous love story? What does it mean to realize that my love lists might be too short? Right? So sapar, the third meaning of the three-letter Hebrew root for story, which is the source code key word in the oldest mystical text we have called the Book of Creation. Right? The third meaning is sapar, which means boundary. Because the question you ask in a story is, where's the boundary of my story? Where does my story end, right? There's a new field in health called biofield health. That my health is not just me as a separate self-organism. I'm part of a larger biofield. I'm part of a larger field of dreams. I'm part of a larger field of meaning. I'm part of a larger field of value, right? I'm part of a larger field of amor, right? Its insides are aligned with love, writes Solomon, right? Like, wow, there's an Akashic field. There's a larger field, right? So that my story expands. That's going to be our focus next week. Okay, but that's sapar, that's boundary. And finally, the fourth meaning of this root, Sefer, is sapir, and sapir is sapphire, blue light. And the reason it's sapphire blue light, if you've ever practiced deeply in an interior tradition, is because when you actually meditate deeply and you access not just what we call in our language of the new story, true self, meaning I'm one with the field, but you access that which is beyond true self, which is unique self, right? I'm part of the field of reality, which is seamless, and I'm part of the seamless code of the universe, true self, but that seamless code of the universe is seamless, but not featureless. I'm a unique feature, right, in the larger story, unique self. So when I have a mystical experience, an awakened experience of unique self, I actually experience myself as being bathed in blue light. And many practitioners, myself included, right, from the great traditions, right, can attest to this experience. You have this experience of intense sapphire bathing in blue light. My friend Howard Bloom had this experience as well. Muktananda, right, the teacher of our dear friend Sally Kempton, speaks extensively about the blue light, right, as do the Kabbalistic traditions, right, as do the, right? the Sufi traditions. So sapir is when I'm in my unique self story, then I have this explosion of this kind of gorgeous sapphire. That's actually what happens in the yoga of that experience when I'm actually practicing and I actually have a direct experience of, wow, I'm in my story, right? I'm in the right place in my story. I'm doing the exact thing that I need to be doing at this moment, right? To be, right, God's verb in the larger story of reality. So that's one. That's just to kind of set us up. Now let's take the next step. Okay. You ready? Everyone with me? We good? We good? Who's with us? Just give us a yes if you're with us. Okay. So I want to take this slow step by step. We're going slow and gentle, right? Slow and gentle. Who else is with us? If you're new, just kind of step in, right? Just so we can hear you, right? Beautiful, gorgeous. Who else? Someone else. Give us a yes. Give us a yes in caps. We got a yes in caps. So give me a yes in caps. Okay. Let's feel each other. Let's feel each other around the world. We're holding hands. We're part of the story together. We're a band of outrageous lovers, right? We're a band of outrageous lovers. That's a yes. Yes, yes, yes. Let's feel each other. Feel me feeling you. Feel you feeling me. That's intimacy, right? Feel me feeling you feeling me, right? Feel you feeling me feeling you, right? We're holding hands. Okay, so here we go. It's part two. Part two is big. Okay, and we're going slow. So we said last week that in order to heal the global intimacy disorder, which we've identified in the literatures that we're writing, in the great library that we're writing, we've identified as the root cause for existential risk, right? This global intimacy disorder, to heal it, right? We need close. We've identified two dimensions over the last several years. We've said we need first principles and first values. And we've talked an enormous amount about what that is, and we'll talk about it more this year. And I'm in deep conversation around that, all last year, all this year. And I hope by the end of the year, we're going to produce a kind of, mega tome on first values and first principles that actually changes the source code. But for now, first values and first principles, freedom, integrity, fairness, right? Love, right? First principles and first values. You can't heal the source code. You can't, right, move us the next step. You can't deal with existential risk. You can't heal the global intimacy disorder without a universal grammar of value. And that universal grammar of value can't be made up value. It's got to be ontology. It's got to be real value, right? So that's one. And two, we've said, right, and I've talked about it and Barbara's talked about it, right? Vashti, we're holding hands together, right? I can't heal the broken information ecology, and I can't heal the polarization. I can't heal the global intimacy disorder unless we have a new story. Now we're saying, we're putting the two together. We're saying we need a new story of value rooted in first principles and first values, and that neither by itself works. Now, we talked about that in our previous broadcast, and I want to deepen into it for a second. So one, okay, now I want to give, and we talked about them, but I want to now go slow and give 4 examples so we can actually just kind of get this in a really clear way, okay? And then we're going to look at something wild, okay? So stay close. So one, and it's a very big deal. Story evokes allurement. And allurement, and this is from my friend Rachel, allurement's a core principle of cosmos, and we've talked about the principles of allurement in our tenets of intimacy. But allurement is a structure of cosmos all the way up and all the way down the evolutionary chain. Story generates allurement, both in a negative and a positive way. Remember the Count of Monte Cristo, right? The great revenge story, right? He's allured, right? In a kind of tragic, beautiful, tragic way. He's got to complete that which is incomplete in his story. So he plots his entire life around vengeance. And in vengeance has a holy spark. And the holy spark is I can't leave the story incomplete. Now that holy spark gets distorted, right? Vengeance is the holy spark of justice, but vengeance is the corruption, right? The degradation of that spark. It's a different conversation. But what you get in the Count of Monte Cristo is that he's not willing to let the storyline go, and there's a nobility in that. And sometimes there's moments where you got to let dimensions of the story go, right? But that's, okay, so there's this notion of story, right? We're allured by story, both negatively, right? There's a negative, right? And we're going to make distinctions next week between what are the dimensions of a story that you need to step out of, what are the dimensions of a story that you need to embrace. We're going to distinguish between an ego story and a unique self story, a victim story and a unique self story. So let's bracket that for now. just for now, I just want to feel story has a power of allurement, of attraction, and story arouses will, right? Story arouses will. First principles and first values also allure me. And first principles and first values also arouse will. They arouse personal will. I'm standing for a principle. I won't back down because I know this is an intrinsic principle of cosmos. So first principles and first values allure me, and they arouse political will and personal will as well, but you need both of them. Each has a different dimension. First principles and first values are not enough. So I said last week, and I want to just say it again with your permission, right? Our dear colleague, Habermas, in the university in Germany, has, although he never uses the word first principles and first values, but he's looking for what are the implicit first principles and first values, not his words. But he refuses to engage in story. Insufficient, it won't get us home. Or my colleague, Brian Swim and Mary Evelyn Tucker, right, who work in the universe story, but their story is mythopoetic, right? It's in a postmodern context, so all true value is deconstructed, so we're just trying to tell a mythopoetic story, right, of the universe. Won't get us there, won't take us home, right? The move is, and this is an evolutionary move we're making, this is a source code changing move. It's wildly exciting. I literally with you trembling before a sheep, right? The move is to bring first principles and first values together, okay? So let's just look at 4 examples of why that needs to be done, right? Number 1, and we've given these images, and I want to just take them slower than we did in our last broadcast. So 1, pointing out instruction. Ready? Pointing out instruction. Everybody ready? Pointing out instruction. It's late at night. Who wants to say the next sentence? Anybody? It's late at night. You turn on what? Netflix. Netflix is the new addiction structure of modern society, right? When lots of us were growing up, TV was off at 12, and there were 3 channels and 1 educational channel. Now Netflix is 24 hours a day, and it's actually an addictive structure that gives enormous gift and causes enormous damage. That's a different conversation, right? But for now, you're on Netflix. You got a choice. You can watch this great documentary about some principles in reality, or this fantastic movie that you can see, this unbelievable story. Now, how do you feel? Just find it in your body. This is a pointing out instruction, right? When you go to watch the movie, your body relaxes, your heart, right? You're like, and you step into the movie and you disappear, right? In a great movie for 2 hours, you just disappear. You're merged with the characters. You feel what they feel. You yearn what they yearn. You're afraid of what they're afraid. You become and all of reality stops. A documentary, even the best documentary, you're interested. You might take a couple of notes. You might be, right, wow, that was really good information. You're excited to love it, but it doesn't have the same allurement. Now, if you take the story and the documentary, first principles and first values together with story, you put them together, you get a story of value, rooted in first principles and first values, right? Then you're there, right? And a great documentary, right, actually should be telling a story, right? It's actually, right? But it's got to be a story that's not just documentary style. See, that's the thing. You got to actually feel the drama of personal life, right, at play, okay? So I want you, it's a good pointing out instruction to get these 2 principles. 2. Everyone ready for 2? We got a drum roll. 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 Drum roll. Drum roll. Drum roll. 2. Okay. Who remembers the movie Spartacus? Spartacus. Anybody who remembers the movie Spartacus? Spartacus. Anybody? Spartacus. Right. Let's get any yeses. Spartacus. Movie Spartacus. Anybody? Right. Kind of late night movie. Right. You're kind of like 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. Simona, check out Spartacus for your birthday. I think it's an early Kirk Douglas movie. It's one of the greats of the kind of, second half of the 20th century. Spartacus. Anybody else remember Spartacus? Okay, long time ago. That's right. It was a long time ago. It could have been Fellini. Okay, let's talk Fellini, says Raquel. So Spartacus. Okay, so in Spartacus, it's a movie about freedom. It's a movie about freedom. And this notion of freedom, what's freedom? Freedom is a first value and first principle of cosmos. Now, how do we actually inject reality with the first principle, the first value of freedom. So the founding fathers, for example, of the great democracies, let's say, for example, in the United States, Jefferson, John Adams, Washington, what they talk about is, stay close. It's beautiful. What they talk about this, you get this? Right? It's unbelievable, right? What they talk about this is, it's wildly beautiful. What they talk about is the story of the Exodus, right? When the Hebrew slaves leave Egypt, right? That story incarnates the first principle and first value of freedom. And then that story becomes ritualized in a dramatic retelling of that story every year on a particular day. And that ritual is called the Freedom Ritual. It's called the Passover Seder. And it's been done in an unbroken lineage chain from generation to generation, from Black slaves, right, in the southern United States to the Sudan, right, to every country in Europe, to all over Asia, to China, right? We reenact, and we don't sit and study Kant's critique, right, of, right, pure reason or moral reason, right? We don't read Kant's Prolegomnon. We're trying to establish, we don't read, right, Aristotle, right? And we don't read philosophers on freedom. We tell the story of leaving Egypt because it's a story of value, which incarnates first principles and first values, which arouses the political will to create liberation. So Passover is the first story, right, in Western history, which we say we reject the idolatry or the slavery or the tyranny that says that yesterday determines today. I have the capacity to change the trajectory of the story. And when I write my story, I'm writing my story as a great evolutionary act. I'm participating in the larger story of cosmos. And so the Passover story says we reject the status quo. We reject the idolatry of yesterday, that there's an inherent freedom at the very core of the story. And I say to my dear friend, Sam Harris, no, right? Prior causation does not eliminate freedom in the moment, right? Human freedom in the moment in some dimension, right, which you can feel in the silence of consciousness, right, is the possibility of possibility, which means that I can always write a new chapter in the story, where I actually realize that the story is at its core an unfinished story. Wow. Okay, now we're going to go even more deeply into this. But let's give the third example, and we're gonna pick this up next week. But third example, what's the third example? Third example, drum roll it is. Let's have a drum roll it is. It's wild. We're just getting started, friends. We're just getting started, right? Third example, anybody remember the third example? Third pointing out instruction. It's a tragic pointing out instruction, but it's a critical one, right? The drum roll is, oh my God, George Floyd, right? Killed, right? By Derek Chauvin in a tragic moment, 9 minutes, neck pressed down by knee, a tragic moment. And we watch George Floyd being killed, right? And we're devastated. We're devastated not by a statistic, right? Of a man killed. We're devastated by watching, right, the murder happen. We see the story happen, and then we begin to hear about George Floyd's story. And when we see the murder happen, and we see George Floyd's story, we see, number one, the violation of first principles and first values, the violation of life. And we see, right, the violation of first principle, not as a statistic, not as a theoretical idea, but as an embodied story, right, in all of its tragedy, in all of its agony, right, in front of us, right? We feel the violation of story, right? We feel the violation of a story of value, right? Rooted in first principles and first values, and we explode into the street because the violation of a story of value rooted in first principles and first values is what arouses political will. So in this moment, when we face existential risk, right, but we're in the middle of this postmodern moment, which has deconstructed the ontology of story itself, where postmodernity says the only grand narrative is that there are no grand narratives. Oh my God, right? And oh my God, right? Postmodernity does two deconstructions, and stay close, which have now filtered into the very core of society, the very core of the techplex, the very core of governance, the very core of the World Economic Forum in multiple levels. We'll talk more about this. But postmodernity says, one, there's no intrinsic value, right? As the parrot expression, the parrot expressor, right? And I say parrot not in a negative way. I'd love to have him over for dinner. I mean, he's a lovely man. But Yuval Harari, and in his book Sapiens, Yuval's not a philosopher, he kind of repeats the canards of postmodernity kind of as dogmatic truisms, right? He says value itself is but a fiction, right? There's no intrinsic value, right? It's but a social construction of reality, right? It's but these are all direct quotes, but a figment of our imagination, right? So that's one deconstruction of postmodernity. And the second is, right, all narratives, all grand narratives are false, right? They're all false. But of course, that is a grand narrative also. That's the grand narrative of postmodernity, is that there are no grand narratives, but they don't notice that performative contradiction. No, we have to reclaim story. We have to reclaim story of value. We have to reclaim a new story which integrates the best of all the old stories, all of the validated insights, which synergizes together into a new whole greater than the sum of the parts. Because that's what intimacy is. Intimacy, we have an intimacy formula. I won't go into it now, but the beginning of the formula is intimacy equals shared identity. And that shared identity, right, between different parts creates a new whole. So when we bring these different parts together into a new whole, into the new story, and we actually stand in that new story, and we stand in the value of that new story, then we can storm the barricades. Then we can bring down the Bastille, right? Then we can change history, right? It's only a new story, but a new story of value rooted in first principles and first values that can change the trajectory of history itself. Wow. Okay. So next week, we're going to take this the next step. We're going to look at fairy tale next week. And we're going to look at, right, what does it mean, right? What's the relationship between my personal story and the larger story? And we're going to unpack, right, 6 new principles, right, of story and how it works in my life and in your life, right, and in the larger story. And in doing this, we're literally evolving the source code itself. Like, oh my God, right? Can you feel that with me, friends? Can you feel that with me? Oh my God, let me, just one more thing and we turn to Krista Josepha. You know, wow. The Baal Shem Tov, the great master of tales, right? The one that Buber wrote about so much, who wanders Romania and in parts of Poland and is filled, is alive, right, with magic and mystery. This figure, Israel, son of Eliezer. When the Baal Shem Tov dies, the Baal Shem Tov, who is a mystical political agitator, who ascends the highest heavens, who goes to the deepest depths, right? And who is a bodhisattva in the terms of Mahayana Buddhism, right? Working for all of reality. When the Baal Shem Tov, right, confronted a problem, right? A tragedy, a crisis was about to happen, he would go to a special place in the forest and he would light a fire. And he would say a particular prayer. And the crisis was somehow resolved. When the Baal Shem Tov dies, his student, the great Maggid of Mezrich, right? He's confronted with a crisis again. And he also is a mystical agitator, a Mahayana Buddhist bodhisattva, if you will, right? For all of reality, right? He's omni-considerate. He feels the whole inside of him, which is what an enlightened human being does. And the Maggid of Mezrich, right? When he confronts a crisis, right? He goes to that special place in the forest. He lights the fire, but he doesn't remember the words of the prayer, but he says, it's enough. I'm at the right place and I've lit the fire and it's enough. And the Maggid of Mezrich dies, right? So his student, Zushiovanipol, right, takes over the mantle of the outrageous lover who acts for all of reality. And he's confronted with a crisis again. And all crises are a crisis of intimacy. And he goes to the place in the forest, but he says, I don't remember how to light the fire. And I don't remember the words of the prayer even, right? But it's okay. I'm at the right place. And the crisis is somehow averted. And then he passes. And then his student Moshe Leib of Sasov is confronted with a crisis greater than all crises. And he doesn't know how to find the place in the forest. He certainly doesn't know how to light the fire. He doesn't remember the words of the prayer. So Moshe Leib of Sassov looks heavenward and he says, but I remember the story of what my masters did. So I'll tell the story, and that will be enough for us. Friends, what's happened to us is we've forgotten the thread of the story. We can't just go back to the old stories. That won't be enough, the stories of the saints and sages. But we also can't go to the postmodern telling of my personal story. That's also not enough. The personal therapeutic encounter with story won't take us home. We have to actually begin to realize that there's a new story to be told. It's a new story about the amorous cosmos, right? Rooted in the deepest sciences, the universe, a love story. And we begin to realize that my story is evolution whispering through me. My story is chapter and verse, right, in the universal love story, right? It's ours to do, right? To tell the new story, the greatest moral erotic act, right, of this generation. Oh my God, so thank you. We're in part 2 of the story, right? We're in chapter 2 of the story right now. And next week we pick up with chapter 3, and we're doing this as an erotic evolutionary act, right? We're putting our lives on the line to tell the story and to get it right for the sake of the whole. Oh my God, and next week is about the personal story. Krista Josefa, thank you. Oh my God.
Oh my God. Thank you, Dr. Marc Gafni. Let's take a moment to breathe in this moment of our story here together. So we can, as Dr. Marc Gafni always teaches us, we can collect the joy of this moment and feel what a privilege it is to have this front row seat at the edge of evolution, and that we get to drink from this Dharma here every week. So let's light this fire together. Every week we come here and we light our torches and we light our hearts and we feel the power of the Dharma of outrageous love buzzing in our cells and in our body. And then the question is, what are we going to do with it? And what we do with it is we commit our outrageous acts of love. So we walk into the world and we share this with the people in our unique corner of the world in our unique way. And one of the outrageous acts of love that David Eitan has committed is that he worked hours and hours to collect the most beautiful sentences of the Dharma spoken by Dr. Marc Gafni and Barbara Marx Hubbard. And he created these beautiful affirmation clips for us that we can listen to so we can remember again and again and again. So I just want to show you 1 minute of this new clip. So last week we had a new clip. This week we have another one. And the next 2 weeks, there will come out 2 more clips. So let's watch it together for 1 minute.
I am a unique configuration of intimacy, and reality literally evolves. The best evolutionary science we have. Reality evolves through the emergence of unique configurations of intimacy that give their gift. And so I say, in my being, in my unique presence, and in my unique activism, I say, let there be light love.
Oh my God, well, what could my service be to the self-organizing universe of the entire billions and billions of galaxies?
Oh my God, that's right, Barbara. What could my service be? That's the question we want to ask ourselves every day. How does reality desire through me right now? And one of the services that we can give each other right now is to go to the chat box and to copy the link of this new clip that has just gone live and to post it on your social media, to share it with your friends. And maybe you want to just share it personally on WhatsApp, for example, or you want to send it in an email. Actually, all of those of you who signed up actually have the email in your inbox right now. So you can forward that to your best friend with a personal note to invite them to join and participate in the evolution of love and be here with us next week. One other thing that I want to invite all of us to do is to become a member, of course, of One Mountain, of this gorgeous, amazing community. So let me just show you how you can step into that. So if you go to onemountainmanypaths.org and you click here on membership, that's where you can read all about what it means to become a member and to resource our home and to resource this revolution together. And as a member, you also get access to 9 courses, and all of them are hours and hours and hours of deep, deep, deep study of the Dharma to really make this new story your own. And we started a new study group studying together this course, Becoming a Future Human. That's a course together with Dr. Marc Gafni and Barbara Marx Hubbard. And we meet every other Saturday to study this course together. So that's a beautiful way to co-create and meet and study and share with other members of One Mountain, and you can still join that study group. So go to onemountainmanypaths.org and become a member and join this revolution of love. Thank you all so much. And now we end, as every week, by bringing all of our faces on. And I just want to say, for those of you who are new here, the way we do that technically is by inviting you to become a panelist. So if you get a pop-up, don't be afraid of it. Just click yes, and then you can turn on your video, put yourself on gallery view so we can see each other, and we'll listen to some powerful music. Your love keeps lifting me higher and higher. So let's dance it out together. Kristina.